Everyone, welcome back to Metric Hub. Today I'm going to teach on problem solving and decision making. Problem solving and decision making, right? Which is our module two. Module two, problem solving and decision making. Within an organization, you can find that problems are solved and decisions are made, right? Meetings are conducted, seminars, workshops are conducted in order to make decisions. Brainstorming sessions are conducted in order to solve problems. There are problems that are okay within an organizations. There are decisions that needs to be made. So problem solving and decision making are the process that management and employees uh, the management and employees they carry out problem solving and uh, decision making process. So I'm going to start by attempting to define what is uh, decision making. What is decision making? What is decision making? All right. Decision making. Right. You can find that problems they okay within an organization. They okay. They are coherent. Cannot avoid problems within an organization. Right. Right. So you can find that let's attempt to define what is problem solving and decision making. So you can find that it is a situation where you can find that there are some relevance facts, right? It's a situation that the organization is in, whereby there are some relevant facts that are known and some relevance facts that are not known, right? When you are making a decision, there are fakes that are known, and you can find that there are fakes that are not known when you are solving a problem, right? So you can find that it involves procedures, which includes identifying matters that needs to be improved or changed, and making the series of decisions aimed at improving and changing um, matters. When there is a problem, it might be there is a need for a decision to be made, right? So we can find that when you are making a decision, you can find that there are you might have alternatives, so many alternatives that can that you can identify that can be able to solve a problem. So in those alternatives, you need to make a decision in order to solve a problem, so another definition is it is a deliberate act. It is a deliberate act of selecting alternatives from a set of competing alternatives in the hope that the chosen alternative will accomplish certain goals, right? There you'll be able to identify different alternatives. So among those alternatives, you need to choose the best alternative that can solve the problem, or that can help you to establish, to accomplish a goal, right? So let's define again. Let's define um problem solving, right? So you can find that when you are solving a problem, it means that there is uh you are analyzing the gap, right? You're analyzing the gap. You're analyzing the gap. We are discovering what is causing it. You're identifying the possible ways of closing it. And also, you are deciding on one or more of them and implementing the decision. Problem solving. There is a problem. When you are solving a problem, you are discovering what causes the problem. You identifying ways on how to solve the problem. And then you decide among the ways, you choose the best way to solve the problem. Once you have chosen the best way, you then implement the decision. You then implement the decision. So let's move on to decision making. Decision making, when you are making a decision, mean to say you'll be having alternatives. You'll be having alternatives, right? So you have to choose the best alternative to solve the problem. So it is a deliberate, it is a deliberately and systematically selection from the alternative, a course of action, which is a solution that seems most likely to solve a problem. You have so many choices. You have so many choices. So you need to choose the most choice or alternative that can solve that problem. That's what you call decision making. We are making a decision from the alternative. We are choosing from the alternative the best solution to solve a problem. That's what you call decision making. Decision making. You are making a decision so that you can be able to solve a problem, right? So let's move on to the role of communication in the workplace, right? So you can find that problem solving process involves maybe a thinking, right, which is intrapersonal. You need to think, right? And also it involves informal consultation, informal consultation with friends and family, or maybe with experts, which is what you call interpersonal communication. When you are solving a problem, you need to think on how to solve a problem, which is what you call intrapersonal communication, right? And also you need to consult or to talk or to communicate with friends and family or even out as experts, which is what you call interpersonal communication, right? Number two, small groups meet to brainstorm and discuss the problem. That's communication, right? Experts are consulted, right? And also individuals are are interviewed, which is also what communication, right? Which is also communication, right? Interviewed in order to solve a problem. Individuals are interviewed. So that's the role of communication in the workplace in regard to problem solving and decision making. Experts are consulted in order to make a decision, in order to solve a problem. Storming sessions are done to discuss the problem and and also to discuss on the solution to solve the problem. Even individuals, they are also interviewed in order to to solve a problem, right? So I'm going to move on to the main factors which influence interpersonal communication. All right. The first one that we are going to discuss is the personality of the individual, right? So when we're talking about personality, we're talking about maybe an introvert and an extrovert, an introvert and an extrovert, right? An introvert and an extrovert, right? So that's personality can also influence in interpersonal communication. Frame of reference, emotions, right, and reasoning and logic, right. I'm still remember these were also we did it in N4 whereby we discussed the factors which influence interpersonal communication, logic and reasoning. Whatever you say, whatever you write should make sense, Emotions, people have to control their emotions when they are communicating to each other, right? You should make sure that you control emotions. Control emotions. Personality, right? We have different personality types, which are the extroverts. Sometimes an extrovert can dominate a group, right? That also cause what? A problem, right, within a group, right? So I'm going to move on to to verbal communication tips for the problem solving, right? Tips when individuals within an organization are solving a problem, right? There are tips when they're communicating. I'm going to discuss tips on how to solve a verbal communication tips for the problem solving process. When employees within the organization are solving a conflict, there are tips, right? For example, you are supposed to make sure that you listen to both critical listen both critically and appreciatively, and you are supposed not to disturb or to interpret to interrupt the person who is talking, the sender, right? Repeat main ideas to make sure that you are following the other person's thoughts, right? You need to express yourself clearly and concisely. Express yourself in a way that does not create emotional barriers. And then you need to avoid being judgmental. Don't judge people. Everyone is uh, has has the right to his or her opinions, right? So you need to make sure that you don't judge another person's opinion. You need not to interrupt. Do not express yourself clearly. Make sure that when you are expressing yourself, you don't end up creating what you call emotional barriers. And also, you need to listen both critically and appreciatively. Critically, whereby you are listening to uh, and judge and evaluate the speaker's message, and then appreciatively when you listen to the main purpose of the communication, right? So these are the what you call verbal tips, verbal tips, verbal tips, right? Verbal tips. So let's move on to non-verbal tips for problem solving, right? So you're supposed to make sure that you are calm and you are confident in your tone of voice. Make sure that you are calm and collected in your when you are supposed to be confident, when you are communicating, when you want to give, when you are giving your opinion or your suggestion in problem solving, right? Make sure that you show open and receptive body language. Don't avoid being or showing maybe aggressive body language. And then make sure that you watch out for the frowning expressions, right? For example, someone might give a suggestion and then you mistakenly frown, or maybe folding hands, or aggressive body language like hands on hips, right? Remember that what the message says is also affected by how it is said. So you need to watch out your non-verbal expressions, because the non-verbal expressions, they normally supplement verbal expressions, right? So I'm going to move on to um, general decision making model, right? So I'm going to discuss the decision making process, the decision making process, right? So the problem solving and the decision making process are interdependent, meaning to say they are interwoven, right? Model, right? You cannot talk about problem solving without ending up talking about decision making. So decisions can be programmed, right? So it might be automatic, whereby we are saying when there is a same old solution for the same sort of problem. Sometimes we have a problem, but we normally have a solution to that problem, right? And then it can also be unprogrammed, whereby application of decision making process is used to a problem to find out a solution that makes the situation better than it was before the problem arose, right? We are starting afresh here, right? We are now looking for alternatives. We are now deciding on the alternative to solve that problem, right? right? So I'm going to move on to the stages in decision making or in problem solving process. So the first stage is whereby you acknowledge that the problem exists, right? Here you are confirming that there's a problem. There is a problem, right? You are confirming that there's a problem. Once you confirm that there's a problem, you are confirming that there's a problem. You are confirming that there's a problem, right? Once you confirm that there's a problem, what are you going to do? You investigate and define the problem. You investigate and define the problem. Once you have done that, what are you going to do? You are going to formulate a written and substantiated account of the problem. Here, you are now putting the problem into writing. Mean to say you are agreeing that there's a problem. Right. Step number 4, you identify and analyze alternative. Now you are looking for solutions to solve the problem. Right. Once you have analyzed, you identify and then you analyze alternatives. Once you have done that, what are you going to do? You prioritize alternative. You put them right. You prioritize analysis and decide on the best solution. You decide on the best solution. And then number 6, you implement the solution and monitor it. Once you have implemented and monitored the solution, and then you are supposed to what? Evaluate the final solution to judge the effectiveness of the implemented solution. Right. So the first one, you have to acknowledge, you need to agree that the problem exists. And then the second step, you investigate, 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 and define the problem. You can do a research, you can analyze information and data so that you can investigate and define the problem. You formulate the written account of the problem. And then once you've done that, you have to make sure that you identify and analyze alternative solutions, right? And then you prioritize alternatives and decide on the best solution. And then number 6, you implement the solution and monitor it. And then lastly, you evaluate the final situation to judge how effective is the alternative that you have chosen, that you have implemented, right? That you have implemented, right? So that's it for today. Don't forget to hit the subscription box so that you can receive notifications. Have a good day. Stay blessed.